How you doing? The last devotional we did was entitled Does God Exist? And I've taken it from a book called Out with Doubt by Kyle Butt. Borrowed this book from Micah and I've been thoroughly enjoying it. And the last time I did devotional, I did a short 4 or 5 minute video with the different pictures and the video monologues. And I felt like that there was quite a bit of information that was in that chapter that I left out. So what I want to do today is read chapter 2. It's Does God Exist Part 2. And as we read it, maybe discuss it a little bit. If you have any comments, you can text me or you can email me or shoot me a message on Facebook. But I feel like that this is going to be the best way in order to get all of the information to you that's in this book without actually sitting down and reading it with you. So here we go. Does God Exist? Part 2. It is no secret that everything designed must have a designer. Every poem a poet, every painting a painter. Even an atheist cannot argue with this idea. If you were to walk through the forest and see a shiny new convertible sitting amidst the trees, you obviously would think that an intelligent designer had created it and put it there. No rational person would believe that natural forces accidentally and randomly form the car. So the whole idea that everything that's been created has to have a designer, has to have some sort of intelligent being that came up with the idea and created it. All right, the phrase, design demands a designer. Those who believe in God often use this argument to establish the fact that since the universe shows design, it must have had a designer. While the atheist admits that all design demands a designer, they will not admit that there is a design in the universe. They may agree that there is complexity, orderliness, and precision, but they will not admit that there is a design. Therefore, in order to establish the fact that an intelligent designer exists, we must show that the natural world exhibits more than simple orderliness and complexity. So for the rest of this chapter, we will take a walk through the Design Hall of Fame. And it has always amazed me as you look into nature and you look into the things around in our world of how complex they are. But yet when you see the complexity that's there, the fact remains that somebody had to create that. So it's not a small world after all. Have you ever gone outside on a clear summer evening and looked up into the night sky? What a beautiful sight, with all the shining, twinkling stars. Scientists tell us that we can see about 3,000 stars just by using our eyes. But if we use a simple telescope, we can see over 100,000 stars. Our universe, however, has many more stars than that. Astronomers suggest that it has over 25 sextillion stars in it. A sextillion, 25 sextillion is basically 25 followed by 21 zeros. That's a lot. They also say it contains over 100 billion galaxies, each of which has around 100 billion individual stars. The universe is so large that scientists determine distance within it by measuring how long it takes light to travel from one place to another. Light moves so fast that it can go about 186,000 miles in 1 second. That means in a year, light can go almost 6 trillion miles, a distance known as 1 light year. The diameter of the Milky Way, in which our solar system and Earth are located, is 100,000 light years across. This means that even if you had a spaceship that could travel at the speed of light, it would take 100,000 years to go across our galaxy, during which time you would travel over 587 quadrillion miles, and you still would have been through only one of the billion galaxies. If you somehow were able to travel across the entire universe, astronomers say it would take about 20 billion years, even traveling at the speed of light. It is no wonder that David said, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork." Psalm 19 and verse 1. So just the idea of going out into, like at night, and looking up into the sky and realizing how big the universe is. I believe that Dr. Seuss depicts this really well in his book Horton Hears a Who, talking about the universes that are around us and all, maybe the little flower like Horton was carrying around that had the Who's in it. And at the end of the movie, it depicts all these flowers floating and all these different universes in different places in the world. The universe is huge. So there has to be some sort of intelligent designer behind it. All right, reading on. Even though it's big, it's not clumsy. While the size of the universe is impressive, its design is even more spectacular. When we examine the facts, it is obvious that God designed it for us. The Earth is 93 million miles from the Sun, a distance that happens to be just right for life to exist. The Sun is like a giant furnace. It gives off more energy in a single second than mankind has produced since the creation. It converts 8 million tons of matter into energy every single second, and has an interior temperature of more than 20 million degrees Celsius. If the Earth were even slightly closer to this wonderful star, people could not live because of the horrible heat and radiation. Interestingly, as the Earth moves in its elliptical orbit around the Sun, it departs from a straight line by only 1/9 of an inch every 18 miles. If it departed 1/8 of an inch, we would come so close to the Sun, we would burn up. If it departed by 1/10 of an inch, we would freeze to death. It's amazing to think that just that tiny, tiny distance can make such a huge difference in whether how hot it is or how cold it is to the Earth. And you can't just say that happened by chance. Somebody, some being like God, had to have had this in his plan and created it and set it in motion. The author goes on to say, also, the Earth has exactly the right surface temperature. The mean global temperature on the Earth is 11.3 degrees Celsius, or about 57 degrees Fahrenheit, which is perfectly suitable for human, animal, and plant life. But the average temperature on Pluto is a freezing negative 230 degrees Celsius. And on Venus, it's a scalding 480 degrees Celsius. Nothing can grow in these extremely low or extremely high temperatures. The Earth is slanted on its axis at precisely 23.5 degrees. If it were not tilted, but instead sat straight up in orbit around the Sun, there would be no seasons as we know them. The tropics would be hotter, and the deserts would be bigger. If the tilt went all the way over to 90 degrees, much of the Earth will be alternate between very cold winters and very hot summers. Again, just showing another fact that God is in control of this. God's the one that designed this. All right, let's talk about the moon. The moon is 240,000 miles from the Earth. This too is just right, since the moon helps control movements of the ocean tides. This movement is beneficial to the Earth because it provides a cleansing of shorelines and helps ocean life prosper. Without such tides, water in the oceans would stagnate, and the animals and plants living in them would die. Our existence on Earth depends on the moon being just the right distance from the Earth. And that's something I thought was really amazing when I discovered how the gravitational pull of the moon and the Earth controls the tides here on Earth. And if the moon was closer or further away, of the tsunamis that we would have. Or how, if it was too far away, how the tides wouldn't be there and everything would be still and stagnant. He goes on to say, Earth's oceans are another good example of perfect design. Water covers approximately 72% of the Earth's surface, which is good because the ocean provides a reservoir of moisture that consistently evaporates and condenses. Eventually, this causes rain to fall on the Earth. It is a well-known fact that water heats and cools at a much slower rate than a solid landmass, which explains why deserts can be blistering hot in the daytime and yet freezing cold at night. But water holds its temperature longer, and thus provides a natural heating and cooling system for land areas on Earth. The Earth's average temperature is maintained in large part by the heat reserve found within the waters of the oceans. Again, just another amazing fact that there had to be some sort of designer behind this design that's here on Earth. Another well-known fact is that humans and many animals breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants, on the other hand, take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. Humans and animals depend on plant world for a constant, fresh supply of oxygen. But approximately 50% of all oxygen comes from tiny microscopic plants within the Earth's oceans and seas. That's something I didn't know until I read this book. I always thought it was just plants and animals, but here it's saying microscopic organisms or microscopic plants that are in the oceans and seas. The universe is huge, well designed, and runs more efficiently than clockwork. The Earth is the right distance from the sun. It is exactly the right distance from the moon. It has exactly the right tilt on its axis, and it is has exactly the right amount of oxygen. Countless other conditions are exactly right as well. And he asks, could all these things be just right by accident? Now, if you had one thing that happened, and that's the only thing that was going on, an accident, yeah, that's something plausible. But all the things that are going on Earth, all of the things that we talked about here, they're all in the right condition. There has to be somebody behind it coming up with this idea. Now, we're going to look at some things that are in the Earth that give us hope or give us proof that somebody had to design this. And this subtitle of this paragraph is entitled, "The Eyes Have It." The human eye is one of the most complicated mechanisms in the world. Even Charles Darwin said that it is hard to believe that this magnificent device could arise accidentally. Charles Darwin was an atheist. And he says it's hard to believe that the eyes could arise by accident. The eyes gather over 80% of the knowledge that is transmitted to the brain. The brain is connected to each eye by over 600,000 nerves that send in messages at the speed of about 300 miles an hour. Scientists tell us that the eye receives 1.5 million messages at the same time, sorts through them, and sends them to the brain. That to me is mind-boggling. He goes on to say the retina covers less than a square inch and contains 137 million light-sensitive receptor cells, 130 million rods, which allow the eye to see in black and white, and 7 million cones, allowing the eye to see in full color. On any given day, the eye may move about 100,000 times, using muscles that, milligram for milligram, are amongst the body's strongest. So he's calling your eyes the strongest muscle if you count it milligram by milligram. Said the body would have to walk 50 miles to exercise the leg muscles an equal amount. The eye is self-cleaning. Lacrymal glands produce tears to flush away dust and other foreign material. Eyelids act as a windshield washers. The blinking process, which is 3 to 6 times a minute, keeps the sensitive cornea moist and clean. And tears contain a potent microbe killer, lyzeme, I think that's how you say it, Lysozyme. It says that guards the eyes against bacterial infection. During times of stress, one eye will rest while the other does 90% of the work. Then the process is reversed, allowing both eyes equal amounts of relaxation. In fact, the eye works so well that technological companies may model cameras after it. Today we have tiny camcorders that can be held in one hand and be used in both bright and dim light. They have lenses, automatic focus, color monitors, and other well-engineered features that allow them to record images. Yet with all the time, effort, and money that went into designing such technological jewels, they are but clumsy replicas of the human eye. If we found a camcorder lying on the ground Who among us would suggest that it just happened by chance? Yet the average human being has two eyes that make the camcorder look like a kindergarten toy. If we're looking for design, truly the eyes have it. Now think about this for a minute. You take your cell phone. I got my cell phone here. You take your cell phone, you open up your camera, and you want to take a picture of the moon outside. And I don't know how many times I've been on Facebook and I've seen somebody who's taken their camera and it's a full moon. It's just a beautiful moon. You go outside and look at it, it's just amazing. It's huge. It might be bright orange. Just amazing looking moon. And you take a picture with your camera on your cell phone or a nice fancy camera that you got. And what you get is a little white dot in the sky. That's what you see. But the human eye can see so much more. Technology has nothing on the human eye. How did it get there? How does it have all those features? God designed it. All right, this paragraph is entitled The Nature of Nature. Even though the universe and human eye both show intricate design, they are by no means the only places to look for God's handiwork. The following examples of design in nature not only are intriguing, but also provide good evidence of a designer. So we're about to look at a bird that lives in Australia. And in my opinion, everything in Australia wants to kill you. But this bird is interesting. It's entitled A Bird with a Thermometer. We all remember having our temperature taken when we were sick. Sometimes we had to hold a thermometer under our tongue for a whole minute. As technology advanced, new thermometers were created that could be inserted into the ear, taking only a few seconds to measure temperature. But there's an Australian bird called the Mallee fowl that has a built-in thermometer far more accurate than the ones used to measure a human's temperature. When the time comes for the female Mallee fowl to lay her eggs, the male bird digs a pit in the ground and piles a large mound of sticks and leaves in it. He covers the pile with sand, sometimes making it as tall as 4 feet. With the sand on top, the leaves and sticks begin to rot, which produces heat. The male makes a hole in the top of the mound where the female lays 1 egg. About a week later, he will make another hole and she will lay another egg. This process goes on until there are about 18 eggs in the nest. Several times a day, the male pokes his beak into the mound. He sticks out his tongue, which is such a good thermometer that it can measure temperature change of 1/10 of a degree. If the mound is too hot, he removes some of the sand. If it's too cool, he adds more. The baby birds hatch after about 7 weeks. And here's the question he asks. How does the Mallee fowl know the exact temperature for the eggs, or that rotting leaves covered by sand will produce heat? And why is it that his tongue can measure temperature change of 1/10 of a degree? For one simple reason. The Mallee fowl is well designed. And you can look at any animal in nature and you can look at how they interact, the things that they do, how they flock, how they migrate, whatever it is. And you just have to say somebody had to design that. This next one's interesting. A beetle with a big bang. The bombardier beetle is a little creature that packs a big punch. He has 2 storage chambers, one on each side of his body. In one chamber, he keeps hydrogen peroxide. Yes, it's the same stuff your parents put on a scraped knee, except stronger. And chemicals known as hydroquinones. In the other chamber, he stores enzymes, proteins that speed up chemical reaction. When the two are kept separate, they are perfectly harmless. But if an enemy attacks the little fellow, he empties the 2 chemicals into a central chamber within his body. As a result of this mixing process, the chemicals form liquid and gases that heat up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, the boiling point of water. The beetle takes aim with a small gun-like projection on the rear of his body and fires the boiling mixture into the face of its attacker. This causes chemicals to shoot out, the enemy is thwarted, and the little beetle goes on his way. Only intelligent design can explain how the beetle is able to produce the proper chemicals, keep them separate until they're needed for his defense, and then propel the explosive mixture into the face of his enemies. I was intrigued by both of these, by the Molly fowl and by the bombardier beetle. So I got on YouTube and looked up some videos, and I watched a video on the fowl, and it was neat. I mean, it did exactly what he said it was doing, what the book here said he was doing. The male would build the nest. He would stick his face down into the hole. You couldn't see his tongue going in from the video, but then you'd see him scraping some of the sand away. And another video I saw where he was pushing some more sand on. Then I watched one video where a guy had a bombardier beetle, and he put it in a container and cornered it, had on a pair of gloves, and he took a pair of tweezers in there, acting like he was going to pinch at it, and you could hear it squirt, and you could see this liquid come out of its backside and steam coming out because it was shooting out this hot liquid. The only way to explain that is that there had to be a designer. He goes on with the conclusion and says, truly, the design found in the universe, the human eye, and nature is sufficient to reveal the hand of the designer. The Apostle Paul wrote in Romans chapter 1, verse 20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his everlasting power and divinity, that they may be without excuse. Every watch has a watchmaker, every painting has a painter, every building a builder. But, according to Hebrews chapter 3, verse 4, he who built all things is God. Now, I want you to think about this. Does God exist? Because there's going to be some time in our lives when people may question us. They may question the fact, do we believe in God? Do we believe that God really does exist? I know that there are some college professors at times, I've read articles where they have oppressed their students because their students believe in God, but they don't. They're atheists, and they make class so difficult for them. We have to make sure that we stand firm in our beliefs, that we truly do believe that God exists. And God is the reason everything is out there. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take something in nature. I don't care what it is. Take an animal, a plant, something in the ocean, something in the desert, something in the jungle, something in the tundra, and I want you to look at it. And I want you to study it just a little bit and see things about it, whether it be a skunk or the Venus flytrap. Take something in nature and just look at it, do some research on it, and see things about it. You know, how it builds its home. Does it migrate? How does it do that? How it eats, what it eats, how the body functions. And try to draw your own conclusion that there had to be a designer to make that thing. One item or one creature that I would recommend would be the duck-bill platypus. I like the platypus because my family and I like to watch Phineas and Ferb on Disney+. But the duck-bill platypus, I've often joked around and said that was everything that was left over. God made all the animals and everything was left over and he threw it into one. You know, it's a mammal that lays eggs. It's furry. It's got a bill like a duck. It swims in the water. It's blind. The male has a barb on its back right foot that has a venom in it. I mean, it's just leftover stuff. But somebody had to design that. Does God exist? Yes, he does. If you have any questions, don't forget you can call me, text me, talk to me here at the church building. Just let me know. Have a great day, guys.